The year 2006 marked a turning point in Mexico's history, a descent into a maelstrom of violence that continues to grip the nation. This was the year that then-President Felipe Calderón launched a full-scale military offensive against the country's powerful drug cartels. What began as a war on drugs quickly spiraled into a war for Mexico itself. The cartels, fueled by the insatiable demand for narcotics north of the border, responded with brutality. They assassinated politicians, police officers, and journalists, silencing anyone who dared to challenge their authority. They terrorized communities, turning once peaceful towns into battlegrounds. The human cost of this conflict is staggering. Since 2006, an estimated 400,000 people have been killed or disappeared in Mexico, victims of a war that seems to have no end. The violence has left a deep scar on the national psyche, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace and the reach of criminal networks. As the cartels have grown bolder and more powerful, the Mexican government has struggled to contain them. The corruption that has long plagued the country has only served to empower these criminal organizations. In the face of such overwhelming violence and impunity, many Mexicans have been left wondering if their country has already fallen under the sway of the narcos. To understand the scale of the challenge facing Mexico, one must comprehend the sheer might of the cartels. They are no longer simply criminal gangs but sophisticated and heavily armed organizations capable of challenging the state itself. The cartels possess arsenals that rival those of many national armies. They are equipped with high-powered rifles, grenades, rocket-propelled grenades, and even armored vehicles. These narco tanks, as they are known, are a testament to the cartel's audacity and their willingness to use overwhelming force. Their firepower allows them to control vast swathes of territory, particularly along key drug trafficking routes. In these regions, the cartels are the law, extorting businesses, controlling local economies, and imposing their will through violence and intimidation. It is estimated that they control as much as 1/3 of Mexico's territory. This control is maintained not just through brute force, but also through a sophisticated network of corruption that reaches the highest levels of government. Politicians, police officers, and judges have been bought off or intimidated into turning a blind eye to the cartel's activities. This corruption has eroded public trust in the government and its ability to provide security. It has also made it incredibly difficult to effectively combat the cartels, as their influence extends far beyond the streets and into the halls of power. While Mexico's drug war violence is mostly within its borders, its impact reaches deep into the United States. America's demand for illicit drugs fuels the conflict, with Mexico supplying heroin, methamphetamine, and especially fentanyl. Fentanyl has sparked a deadly epidemic, claiming countless American lives. Cartels exploit this demand, flooding communities with dangerous drugs. Profits from this trade empower cartels to corrupt, arm, and terrorize. The U.S. and Mexico are locked in a deadly cycle, demand and supply. Adding to the crisis is the Iron River, guns smuggled from the U.S. to Mexico. These weapons fuel cartel violence, making the conflict even more deadly. As the violence in Mexico escalates and the flow of drugs into the U.S. continues unabated, there are growing calls for more assertive American intervention. Some policymakers and pundits argue that the U.S. must take a more proactive role in combating the cartels, even if it means taking unilateral military action within Mexican territory. Several options are being considered, ranging from increased intelligence sharing and joint operations with Mexican security forces to more controversial measures, such as drone strikes and the deployment of U.S. special forces. Proponents of intervention argue that the cartels pose a direct threat to U.S. national security, not only by fueling the drug epidemic, but also by destabilizing Mexico, a key ally and trading partner. They point to the cartels' growing power and their increasing sophistication, arguing that the Mexican government is either unwilling or unable to effectively combat them alone. They also highlight the precedent of U.S. military intervention in other countries battling drug trafficking organizations, such as Colombia. However, the prospect of U.S. military intervention in Mexico is fraught with risk and raises serious legal and ethical questions. It is a move that could further inflame anti-American sentiment in Mexico, undermine Mexican sovereignty, and potentially draw the U.S. into a protracted and costly conflict. It is a decision that would have far-reaching consequences, not only for the U.S. and Mexico, but for the entire region. U.S. military intervention in Mexico is a deeply contentious issue, striking at the heart of Mexican sovereignty and national pride. Many Mexicans see it as a violation of their country's integrity and their right to address internal security challenges. There's a long history of U.S. intervention in Latin America, often with disastrous consequences. U.S. action could provoke violent backlash from cartels, endangering both Mexicans and U.S. citizens. Cartels are ruthless and would likely retaliate against any perceived aggression. The conflict is ill-suited to a conventional military solution, as cartels are deeply embedded in society. Any intervention must be carefully calibrated to avoid civilian casualties and further alienation. The current crisis in Mexico is, in many ways, a consequence of past failures to effectively address the root causes of drug trafficking and cartel violence. The kingpin strategy, pursued by both the United States and Mexican governments for decades, focused on capturing or killing the leaders of major cartels. While this approach did succeed in dismantling several powerful organizations, it also had the unintended consequence of fragmenting the drug trade, leading to the emergence of smaller, more violent, and more difficult to control groups. The recent policy of hugs, not bullets, adopted by former Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, aimed to reduce violence by addressing the social and economic factors that drive people to join cartels. While this approach had some merit, it also emboldened the cartels, who interpreted it as a sign of weakness on the part of the government. The result was a surge in violence, and a sense that the government was losing control. These past failures highlight the complex and intractable nature of the drug war and the need for a more nuanced and comprehensive approach, one that goes beyond simply trying to eradicate the cartels through force. It is becoming increasingly clear that there is no purely military solution to the cartel problem in Mexico. While military and law enforcement actions are necessary to disrupt cartel operations and bring criminals to justice, they will not be sufficient to end the cycle of violence and impunity. To achieve lasting peace, a multifaceted approach is required, one that addresses the root causes of cartel power. One crucial step is to reduce the demand for illicit drugs in the United States, which fuels the entire drug trade. This requires a sustained commitment to prevention, treatment, and harm reduction strategies aimed at reducing drug use and addiction. Equally important is stemming the flow of weapons from the United States to Mexico. This will require stricter gun control measures in the United States, as well as increased efforts to intercept illegal arms shipments at the border. Addressing corruption within the Mexican government and security forces is also essential. This will require strengthening the rule of law, increasing transparency and accountability, and rooting out corrupt officials. The drug war is not just a Mexican problem, it is a binational challenge that demands a binational solution. The United States and Mexico must work together as partners, sharing intelligence, coordinating law enforcement efforts, and supporting each other's efforts to combat the cartels. This cooperation must be based on mutual respect, trust, and a recognition of each country's sovereignty. The United States must resist the temptation to impose its will on Mexico or to dictate solutions. Instead, it must engage in a genuine dialogue with its southern neighbor, listening to Mexican concerns and working collaboratively to develop strategies that benefit both countries. This includes providing Mexico with the financial and technical assistance it needs to strengthen its institutions, improve its security forces, and address the social and economic inequalities that fuel cartel recruitment. The future of the drug war in Mexico remains uncertain. The cartels are deeply entrenched, and the challenges are immense. However, there is hope. The Mexican government, under the leadership of President Claudia Sheinbaum, has expressed a commitment to tackling the cartel problem head-on. The United States, under the Biden administration, has also signaled a shift in strategy, away from the militarized approach of the past and toward a more holistic approach that emphasizes diplomacy, development, and respect for human rights. Whether these efforts will be enough to end the violence and bring lasting peace to Mexico remains to be seen. What is certain is that it will require sustained commitment, unwavering resolve, and a willingness to confront difficult truths on both sides of the border. The road ahead will be long and arduous, but the alternative, a future where Mexico is beholden to the cartels, is simply unacceptable.
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.